Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Miguel, aka Mighty Migs, and this is episode number 5 for Passion for Acting podcast. And as you may all well know, that I am actually a huge MMA and UFC fanatic, and in that sport of MMA, you have to have different aspects you have to cover. But acting is my MMA, and I have my friend and our head coach here as an actor, Mr. Sam Haft.
Good afternoon / early evening, Miguel. How are you, my brother?
Well, pretty good. Pretty good to see you. You know, this is the highlight of my day so far.
Oh,
and I hope it's
You're
the
too
same
kind,
thing
mate.
for you.
Checks in the mail.
No need to pay me for that, boss. But you know what? Speaking of which, the official sponsor for this episode is actually Sydney Actors Association. So you could actually check out the Instagram page in the description box below. And today's special guest is actually the CEO of Sydney Actors Association himself, right here,
You make
Mr.
me
Sam
sound
Haft.
so flashy and important. That's very kind of you. Yes, it's been a pleasure having you in our classes for about a year or two, at least by now. I think. Do you know when you first started with us? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think it was late December 2020 because it wasn't
2020.
long.
Yeah, sure. Great.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it wasn't
Yeah,
long
2
until
years.
after we finished filming Unreal with Lazarus
That's
Ratswary.
right.
And,
Good old Laz. He's a champion of a man. Beautiful actor.
oh man, good guy, top guy. You know, just like if there was more people like him, I think this place will be much more
kind.
peaceful. Yeah.
I just want to do a little preamble or a little disclaimer. I am very badly lit. We like everyone very well at SAA, but I'm at home at the moment, and so it's overlit. So if I look a little bit like the demon that appears briefly in The Exorcist, with all this the darkness, I think it's cool and it looks moody, but it's probably I need to get a ring light, darling. But anyway, man. So that's the end of my disclaimer. But yeah, we've had you working with us for about 2 years now, which has been absolutely awesome. And you're enjoying the classes. You're having a good time.
Oh, I'm having a good time, coach. That's why I keep coming back, even though I disappear
really-
every now and then. So yeah.
I think that's probably the most important thing. Everything else is a bonus. Obviously, we work teaching professional actors. We teach people who are either, aspiring actors or people who've been working in the business for quite a while. I think our oldest students are, around their 70s, and our youngest, I think, at the moment is 17 years old, and we have anyone anywhere in between. When people say, we'll start getting on to talking acting too much, we'll get there when you ask me questions, but I think the most important thing in our line of work is as long as you are having fun. And when people say to you after a play, did you have fun, don't take that as at least you were having fun. It's actually, I think it's the most important thing. It really is. And a lot of people are into suffering for their art. You work hard. Of course you work hard, but it doesn't mean you can't enjoy it at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty much true. Yeah, because fun is one of the best ways to produce the best results.
100%.
Yep. So it is what it is. So
Yes.
Can you give us more of an introduction about yourself and how you got started
Sure.
into the industry?
I was born at a very early age. I met my mother when I was very young. I am a Pisces and I like walks in the park. But yes, no, I grew up in a family of actors. My father is an actor, Lionel Haft, and my mother is an actor, June Haft, otherwise known as Buster Skeggs. And they both have about a century at least of experience between them. My godfather's also an actor, a chap called Alfred Molina, who some people may know as Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man 2. And people know my dad, probably. He's done a lot of wonderful things, but I think a lot of people sort of know him maybe from Moulin Rouge and things like that. He played the scary bastard, the scary guy who's Richard Roxburgh's henchman. So he spends most of the film trying to kill Ewan McGregor. Interesting story on Ewan, by the way, before I forget. And this is about talking about having fun. I've got a friend who's a fight choreographer, and he was one of the people that worked on the Star Wars movies. Now, I know you love your sci-fi and your Bond movies and all those wonderful kind of films. And when Ewan apparently was doing Star Wars, when he was doing the fight scenes, the fight choreographers kept having to remind him not to do the sound effects because he kept going like he was a kid. Big kid, I mean, it's everyone's, well, not everyone's, but a lot of people's dream to be in that kind of, that kind of film. And I just thought that was wonderful. That just goes to show you never grow up in our job. But anyway, going back to me, as actors love talking about themselves. So I've been an actor myself for about 20 or so years now. I came over to Australia from the UK in 1998. My God, 24 years ago. Holy, can I swear on here? Holy shit.
Of course you can. It's a
Holy
free
shit.
speech
Oh,
platform.
just done. Free speech. Woo-hoo. And yeah, so I ended up studying at NIDA, which was wonderful. It was great. It was a very, it was an extraordinary place to go. I don't think when I was there I was quite old enough to know what I needed to know in terms of the questions that I needed to ask. And, when you're learning, I think it's nice to sort of know what you're trying to learn. I just sort of went in there, and I don't think I really decided to become an actor from the get-go. I think when I was about 15 or 16, it occurred to me that I'd been growing up in, dressing rooms and backstage while my parents were doing plays, and I had quite a strong connection with that particular line of work, understandably, and I'd grown up on a very staple diet of film and television, and two people with very good taste, if you ask me. Every Friday night was Cheers, watching Cheers, and it was television was a very big part of our sort of family. The three of us would crowd around and watch what was good, and there was some good television. And then when I moved over here, I think that's when I'd already started doing drama at a high school, and I'd been in a few things, and I think I had a talent for it. I think I was, I kind of, picked up some tricks along the way from the folks. And then my dad said something really wonderful to me that kind of stuck with me. We did a play called One for the Road. Jim Cartwright, I think it is. Apologies to the writer if it's not. I think it is Jim Cartwright, One for the Road. Yeah, might be. Probably look that up. And my dad came to see it. It was only at high school, but it was a really terrific play. And he said to me afterwards, he said, "You know how to turn a line," was his compliment. And that's a nice way of saying you've got good comic timing. And I don't know if many people would agree, but I'd like to think that's one of the few things I've got going for me, and sort of, or I did have going for me initially as an actor. So I could, I was funny-ish. I knew it. I could tell a joke. I knew how to read the room. And when I first turned up at drama school for the auditions, I was kind of a plank of wood with legs. Like, I was this London boy, and I even sounded like Ali G. Like, I think I walked into the auditions and I was like, "My name is Sam, and I was going to do Richard III." Like, literally, I sound like a proper London boy. And it's funny because they film you when you first start at drama school. They film you on like the first day or two, and then on the final week of your 3 years. And so you turn up however you are. You're green, so to speak. And then on the third year, when you watch the video back, it goes from like, "Hello, my name is Sam," to "Hello, my name is Sam, and I'm an actor." And it's an interesting thing. I think it was a good way of just making sure that you'd actually learned something in the 3 years you'd been there, because they certainly offered you a lot of things to learn, but you find your own way. Anyway, I'm waffling. I digress. So what happened then was I graduated from NIDA back in 2001, 2002. Some really lovely and wonderful actors in my year, and the year above and the year below. You were surrounded by very talented people, and it was. I was very quiet when I was there. I think I was quite shy deep down, and I think that's important for a lot of actors to remember, that most of the great actors aren't particularly extravagant people. They aren't necessarily, the most confident people, which is nice to remind yourself. There is a confidence that is involved in our job, 100%, but I think there's some sort of weird assumption that actors are all like, "Look at me, I'm really fascinating," but I don't think that's really what it's about. I think most actors are fascinated by other people, fascinated by the world, fascinated by stories, fascinated by, and ultimately you are the person that's doing it. So a painter paints a painting, paint a painting, and you step away from it, and then you compose a piece of music and you listen to it. I made that, but it's not me. Whereas with an actor, a singer, a dancer, you are the piece of art, so to speak. So you have to get to know yourself and be comfortable in your own skin, which took me a while. But I think I've got there. It's, I've had a good couple of decades in which to do so. And so I started working in theatre. I started working in a lot of independent theatre in Sydney. And then I went into... It took me a couple of years before I started to really find my feet, I suppose, in front of the camera. It wasn't that I was particularly daunted or anything, but I think I was always a bit of a theatrical actor. I was always a bit sort of a performer. And so I had to recalibrate, even though we were taught some wonderful things at NIDA about acting on camera. But and screen acting, of course, it's a drama school, but I think it still took me a little while to sort of find my way. And eventually and I'd already started teaching. I started teaching when I was at NIDA. I was in third year and I was assisting the open program as an assistant tutor, and then I started to become a teacher myself. So I started teaching for the open program, and then when I graduated, I was getting some work as an actor. I was doing okay, but I always found teaching as interesting to me sorry, I'll turn off my Facebook. I've just got a message come through. I always found teaching as interesting as I found acting, and sometimes I would have to turn down an acting job or try and reschedule things a little bit to be around my teaching work, and sometimes the other way around, of course. You can't, if you're doing Underbelly, you can't say, oh, I've got a class and I'll be there when I get there. You know, it doesn't work like that. But there were things that, you know, it started to almost be a priority for me. I just found it intriguing and wonderful, and I love doing it. I love working in that capacity. And then I ended up teaching for the NIDA Open Program more as running the classes myself, so being given classes to teach, which was where I really started to cut my teeth. And then I started teaching the acting course at Brent Street. I taught at a lot of independent sort of drama schools. I tended to teach adults, but also taught a lot of kids in my first 5 to 10 years. So I was doing a lot of work with ATYP, the Australian Theatre for Young People. And then I found a home as a teacher for quite a while, which was the Actors Centre, where I was for about 7 or 8 years, I think, all in all, or maybe a bit less, 5 or 6, I think. And I was teaching their Power of Performance, which was kind of like their open program, their part-time course, which still runs and is going very strong, thanks to some fantastic people, Troy and Johan and so on. And then I started teaching the full-timers, so I started teaching the actual acting course. That was really my first time teaching a tertiary degree, so to speak, and I had some pretty wonderful mentors, particularly Andrew Lloyd and the one and only Dean Carey as well, who started the Actors Centre, runs the Actors Centre, and that's where it became an absolute obsession in terms of a vocation. I was listening to something a couple of days ago. There was a wonderful man called Sir Ken Robinson. He was Ken Robinson before he became a Sir. Sir Ken Robinson, and he's written a book called Element, and the theme of a lot of what he talks about is people finding their element, finding the thing that you are good at, finding what you enjoy doing, most importantly. So you might be good at it, but do you actually enjoy doing it? And I think that's very important for everyone in life. You know, a lot of us, and I've been there before, got that t-shirt of doing a 9 to 5 or doing a job that you don't really love, but you've got to do it to pay the bills. Whereas I think, you know, it's very important to find, even if it doesn't necessarily become your vocation, hopefully it does, but things in life that stimulate you and your creative energies. And for me, it happened to be acting and acting teaching. So very long story short, that's kind of how I fell into it. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, I went independently from another school that I ran with somebody else, and I started the Sydney Actors Association. Has a very flashy name, woohoo, we've all got to have one. I would just call it acting with some legends if I could, but we've called it the Sydney Actors Association, and it's been going strong for about 5 or 6 years, and I've seen some incredible people. I see a lot of incredible people come through that door. Well, I've been fortunate enough to work with all sorts of wonderful actors from all sorts of walks of life. I'm just going to have a sip of my coffee. And yeah, so that's how our paths crossed, you and I. And I can't call it work. I can call it work, but I don't ever think, oh, I've got to get to work. I don't. I look forward to it. I walk from my house, Erskineville, to the studio that we have. Our nice studio. Our cheap and cheerful studio. No, it is lovely. It's a nice, big, wonderful space, but it doesn't have that. I've always tried to make it that it doesn't have that sort of institution feel, the Kubrick movie feel. You know, it's all white walls and glass windows. Nothing against that if that's the way a school looks. Fabulous, good on you. But for me, it's always been something about the roar of the grease paint and the smell of the crowd, or the other way around, the smell of the grease paint, roar of the crowd. That you know, something about a place that feels a bit of a home for people. So a place where people can can come and ply their trade, work on their craft. We have our classes that run. We have outside hirers that use our studio to rehearse things. We do play readings. We do all sorts of things. So, I'm proud of it. I'm very happy to be doing it, and I'm very, very lucky in terms of the people that I am surrounded by. And yeah. How's that for a long answer?
Oh, that's a very good introduction. Probably the longest one so far, but I was
Thank
just
you very
listening.
much.
I was actually listening to pretty much every bit of it, and you know what? That introduction was just explains why your passion for coaching actors like myself is resonating in your personality and the way you just do it on the spot during acting classes. Yeah. So, so the next question there is that, so what makes you more passionate about coaching actors like myself compared to pursuing your own acting career these days?
Well, it's not, the two aren't mutually exclusive. I still, if something comes up, I still have a very wonderful agent that I've been with for quite some time. They're terrific and beautiful people. They're wonderful. I think your relationship with your agent should be a friendship as well as a business relationship, and I'm very lucky in that department. I don't not act anymore. I just choose to do it less. And it's not because I've sort of put it away for good. It was just that other things took precedent, which was teaching. And not that I certainly haven't done everything that I would like to do as an actor, but I've done a lot of it. Like I've done enough sort of television and films and a lot of theatre and toured with shows, and I've had the experience of being in that line of work where I feel fulfilled. So the rest is a bonus for me. I was never somebody who had aspirations, and I completely support people who do. But to have my name in lights, it was never something that sort of particularly intrigued me. I was more interested in the work. I was more interested in being creating art, being an artist, telling a story. I think my old man and my mum always used to say that being an actor, having your name up in lights isn't a sign of a successful actor. A successful actor is somebody who can make a living from doing what they love, and so the rest is a bonus. And you'll kind of find I've been lucky enough to meet quite a few of the very well-known actors and very famous actors, so to speak, and they have always struck me as a general rule as what we call in musical theatre PLU, which is people like us. They're one of us, they don't suddenly become, I'm a movie star, they're just another working actor who happens to have done very well at what they do, in commercially and so on. But if they're worth their salt, which most of them are, it's still about the work, about working with each other, and So going back to why I don't do it as much anymore is because I never got bored of it. I never sort of wanted to put it to bed as a vocation. I just wanted to, just focus on my teaching and my directing for a while, and I'm all the happier for that. Although I will go back to things, if they come up. So the sort of agreement I have with my agent is that if something comes up that they think I'm absolutely perfect for, then I'll go for it. And if it's something that they really think I should go in for, but I don't tend to be a sort of weekly auditioner. But I support a lot of people who do. So I've been there. I have that T-shirt, so I'm qualified to speak from experience. You don't have to have been an actor to be an acting teacher, but it bloody helps. I really do believe that. I think, like with directing, I would advise any director who working in film, television, or theatre to have, or whatever other medium, radio, to know what it is like to be the person up there. I actually think of directing as, I wonder how it was invented. I always almost feel like it was the actor that got fired in the nicest way possible. There was maybe 6 actors on stage, and they were about to rehearse a play, and someone came up with the idea of, I wonder what this looks like, and then said to one of the other actors, do you mind sitting out in the audience and watching and telling us if it's any good? And that was how a director kind of came about, that and they probably felt really pissed off that they got fired. Oh, I want to be in the fucking show. And then suddenly they're sitting out in the audience going, I bloody love this, taking notes and giving advice. So I think a director is part of an ensemble. And, some people say your director is your boss in terms of what their ultimate vision is what you are there as your job to help fulfill. But most of the great relationships I've had in terms of working with a director has always been collaborative. And I think that's very important. And I think all the good directors would put that at the forefront of what they do, because it feels better. The room's better. The work is better. I've stopped talking now, so you can ask me another question.
Hey, look, like I said, this is your
Shut
time to
up,
shine, and I love it. So I'm just
Okay.
liking to hearing the stories. But yeah, so if you want to go to the next question, I'm okay with that.
Well,
So
I'm just trying to think if there's anything else about. Look, I love acting, and I've had a love-hate relationship with it when I was younger. I got a terrible case of stage fright when I was doing a play. I was doing a play at the Sydney Theatre Company, and actually it's the only ever job that I've ever pulled out of, and I did it because I was starting to break down, and this is not the hardest job in the world. Digging holes in the road is a tougher way to make a living. And it's, as again, I was quoting my parents all the time. I think my old man again said, it's not a cure for cancer, but it's better than digging holes in the road. It's a wonderful way to make a living. Nothing wrong with digging holes in the road. I've done plenty of manual labour myself in my time. But it is a wonderful job. But it can be hard work in a different way. In terms of, it requires something of you. Not always. Sometimes you can, if it's a broad comedy with not much of a darkness to it, then you just have fun and play, and the rest is gravy. And more importantly, when you're doing a very serious or dramatic piece of material, I think it's all the more important to relish it. And no matter how serious it gets, that underneath you're just thinking, I'm dressed up. You're just a kid playing. But the one time that I did have a sort of real love-hate relationship was when I was doing that play, and it started to get to me. And we made sure there was somebody who could replace me before I left. I didn't just sort of head for the hills. There was an actor ready to take over. But apart from that, I've always kind of enjoyed it. I just think it's a wonderful thing to do. It's you connecting with other people, creates community. And I'm sure I'm not alone in this. I'm interested how you feel about this, Miguel. But I think that we've got to be very careful in our current day and age to ensure that we don't lose community. We're very busy isolating in various ways. So I read an article that Spielberg's been interviewed, and he was talking about the death of cinema and whether it is dying or not. They've always said theatre is on the edge of extinction, but always manages to get through. But cinema, the streaming platforms are a wonderful thing. They're incredible. We are in a renaissance of television where you can choose to watch anything, any genre, any style, any country of origin, any journey, any demographic. It's possible, and that's extraordinary and wonderful. It's all at the press of a button. But you can't really beat the collective feeling of being in a room with a bunch of other people while a bunch of other people tell you a story. Be that live theatre or be that the cinema. And I think that's very important. And so when it comes to the death of community, you don't want to sound too morbid about it, but it's salvageable. And the way that we do that is to tell each other stories in one another's company. And so why I also love SAA, why I love any institute or any school or any, actors gym, whatever the term you want to use is that we used to sit around a campfire and tell each other yarns. We used to, I often wonder, there's all those stories about how theatre was invented, and the Greek rites of passage and and religious rituals and so on. I'm sure it went way further back than that. Theatre's probably always been around. Animals do it. Peacocks put on a show when they're trying to get laid. Same with Birds of Paradise. You watch David Attenborough. Watch those Birds of Paradise. It's insane. They're incredible. They do these dances to, I'm the best puppy in the shop. Take me. But where was I? Yeah. So with the idea of the creation of theatre. So maybe way back when there were a bunch of cave people sitting around and they were telling one another a story in their basic language. And so one caveman said to everyone else around the fire, so the lion was going to attack Steve, as if there would be a caveman called Steve. But the lion was about to attack Steve. In fact, can you be Steve and I'll be Steve, you be the lion. And Steve, they were the first person to get up and do the story for you. And we've been doing that ever since. And telling it communally is a very important thing. So we used to sit around a campfire, but when we're in class, hopefully, without putting too fine a point on it, we're still doing the same thing. It's just the fire is plugged in and it's a TV screen. And then there's 2 people or 3 people or 1 person up there in front of that machine, in front of that camera, and we watch what they're doing and we're being told a story. And it's, it's a wonderful thing for people to come together and do. So if it starts with that, then the rest is all about craft and technique. It's about learning to tell stories and how well we can tell them, so that you can make a living out of it. You can make you can eat from the fruits of your labor.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, is that like what you told us in continuously tell us in acting classes, that be in the moment, be the character. You're not acting, you're reacting. So
Absolutely. There is only one moment, and it's just gone, and it's just gone, and it's just gone. It's just here as we are now. And I'm sure I'm not alone here, but a lot of us are either ruminators or what's the word I'm looking for? So we either ruminate or we prognosticate. That's a very powerful figure on the Scrabble board, but we tend to dwell on the past and the future. But acting makes you have to be in the present. It's part of your job, but it's also there's no other choice. You can be having a hell of a day, and then you go and do a show, and come 8 p.m. or 7:30 or whenever time the show starts, probably before in the half-hour call when you're getting into it with each other in terms of getting ready to do the show, chatting in the dressing room, or finding your own corner and getting ready to do what you got to do. That there is a readiness, there's a presence about it, which is a fantastic feeling, and you can get that on a film set. It's a bit different, but you should have that feeling. But yes, the present moment. As you well know, one of my favourite actors is Hopkins, and actors always come up in class, because who else are we going to talk about apart from great performances and other things that inspire us, but particularly actors that we've seen do things, and what is it about them that we loved. Hopkins, I always think, is if I could teach everything about acting in one person, I think he's a very good example, or the things that I think are key ingredients. And he said, "Today is," what was the Hopkins quote? "Today is the tomorrow that you were worried about yesterday. Today is the tomorrow that you were worried about yesterday." And I think that's pretty sage words, So yes, you do have to be present. Yeah. And of course, as you know, there is only one word that we don't use. Well, we don't use the word sorry. There's a sorry jar that I don't use enough. It's supposed to be saved up for sweets. But we don't like using that word in the room, because you have nothing to apologise for. Unless you were to hit someone around the head, which no one's ever done, that that there's no reason to apologise, because it's a creative act. And we're just there to find our way. If anything, we want to be failing forward. The best thing you can do is to try and get it wrong and see what happens. The only wrong would be to try to get it right. So the other word that we don't use, going back to what I was talking about before, is action. I love that word. I think it's a great thing. It's part of the movie magic. Action, quiet on set, all that stuff. But I sometimes think that the word action infers to an actor and be interesting. And so actors can tend to seize up because they feel something's expected of them. So we don't call it. So you just got to start the scene or conversation, as we call it. Thank you, Les Chantry. I borrowed that from him. Very savvy guy. His book's out recently, by the way. I recommend that. He's wonderful, Les. Very, very insightful person. And teacher and actor. But yeah, we don't call action. Because you want to find your way into it, and as long as it doesn't take till Christmas, don't rush. Get amongst it. See what's going on around you before you start. What's happening, what's in the room, what can I see? That other actor's over there. I often, the wonderful days when you used to be able to go into a casting and actually do the casting in the room, and then along came this pandemic. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if it will go back to that, or we'll keep self-testing, which is a great thing. It's a mixed blessing, but it's wonderful because you have some autonomy over the work you do, and you can make sure you send in the ones you're happiest with, which is and it's an art form unto itself. But when you used to go into the room, so obviously I talk to a lot of actors when they finished auditioning for something, and they might speak to me on the phone afterward, and I'd say, how'd it go? And if it didn't go too well, and normally it would do hopefully, because they had a fantastic coach. But if it didn't go too well for them, my first question would be, what were the colour of the walls in the room, or what was the casting director wearing, or any of those sort of questions. And very often they didn't have an answer because they were just worrying about things, about the script or about the performance. So they weren't actually their body had turned up, but they hadn't fully turned up. And there's no reason to feel that need, but it does happen to us, you know. The casting should be a pleasant experience. You can have fun. You can treat it as your first day of rehearsals, and hopefully you get asked back for the second one. You can go in and do the thing you love. It is a day at work. It's great. Sometimes you're going to have panic. You're going to be worrying. The job, you care about it so much. You want to make sure that you nail this. But then what happens for me anyway, and so I often project my own stuff when I'm teaching in terms of, I've been in that boat before, you know, if you spot it, you've got it. That if we're worrying, it's very often the perfectionism has started to creep in. And as you may remember, we've used a lot of phrases in class, a lot of quotes and little mantras that hopefully stick with people as we go. And one of them is that perfectionism is the enemy of creativity. You know, if you're worrying about perfection, then you cease to be able to be as creative. You weren't born with must be perfect on your birth certificate. You can make mistakes. You are playing a human being. You know? There's exceptions to the rule. When Morgan Freeman's playing God, of course, he's pretty perfect because he's meant to be God. Assuming God is perfect. But I don't believe in God. I believe in a higher power. Anyway, that's another thing. But yeah. So, long story short, with all that, you know, it's actor's joy. That's what makes it work, and then the rest is a bonus. You know,
That's right. Just being in the moment, like what you said. Yeah, just having fun. Because like one of the things that you reminded me is not to be hard on myself if I make a mistake, and I think I'm gradually improving in that. Because
you very much are, and you know, you're one of those people, though, Miguel. Like when you say you're hard on yourself, it never gets in the way of connecting with others and you know, going about your work. You do it in a very diligent way, and I don't think, you know, for some people our self-flagellation can be relatively crippling. I've never seen that with you, and I think that's fine. You know, that we can be hard on ourselves as long as we're treating ourselves with care and kindness. You know, I've been very hard on myself in the past, and I try not to be too much anymore because you get to my age, but you start to think, well, what's the point? You're a human being. You try not to make too many mistakes, you know, the ones that won't hurt other people or anything, but you're a human being. But one of the things about being hard on myself or being hard on ourselves that I remember someone saying to me was, Sam, if you were as hard on your friends as you are on yourself, then most of them would have headed for the hills. You know, sometimes you're much harder on yourself than you are on other people. So to reverse that, I always tell people to try and treat themselves as they would their friends. When you're watching your own work back, look at it objectively. Look at it as someone watching an actor. Don't look for every single false move you've made, because nobody else is looking for that. There's a number of some of the best actors in the world, and the word best is a very open season. You know, I don't believe in best and worst, but there are certainly actors that we know are wonderful and brilliant and very much consistently in our the things we go to see. And I think they're probably just the same as us in terms of, you know, when they watch their work, they're never fully satisfied, and it could always be better. But to borrow a term that was passed on to me from Andrew Lloyd, it is what we call divine dissatisfaction. It can always be better, but it doesn't have to be a problem. That's exciting, that it can be better. You know, Usain Bolt, during his career, I'm sure he was thinking sometimes I could probably take another 100th of a second off it. But I don't think he was at home going, oh, I'm not fast enough, it's not good enough. You know, I think he had a healthy optimism about the possibility of improvement. And I think, you know, that's a way to go into our work. So it's always a pleasant challenge. Yeah. And it's like life. Acting is a wonderful thing. It's a very noble trade, and it can be an incredible thing, very, very beneficial to people. And the world would not be as exciting a place without great storytelling. But you know, at the same time, it's just dress-ups. You know, it's just storytelling. It's like life. It is way too important to be taken seriously. You can take the work seriously, just don't take yourself too seriously. You know, take the work as seriously as you want in terms of, you know, commit to the story, Commit to what you're doing. You've signed the contract or you've chosen to do the play. And so you put your heart and soul into it. And that should fuel you. That should make you light up. But if you're starting to take yourself too seriously, then it can be a danger zone. You start to worry. You start to become self-conscious. You start to think you're not good enough. And that's unnecessary. And of course, it is to the detriment of the work sometimes.
That's right. And one of the things that, you remind me of is just to adapt into the situation, to the scene, because adapting to the situation, because like in the same day, we could be filming the same scene, the same location, but two different scenes. So one's happy, one's sad. And then once so you have to learn how to adapt.
You could be proposing marriage to someone in the afternoon and getting divorced in the evening because it happened at the same restaurant. Yeah.
That's right. Or just like...
I wonder if there is another scene in Kramer versus Kramer when they did the famous scene between the two of them. I wonder if they actually did a scene earlier in the film. I don't know. But anyway, yes, things aren't shot consecutively on film, so you do have to know where you are in the character's journey and the character's arc. Another thing on that is I always think about going back to being a kid. So we do a little exercise sometimes at the beginning of class where we get everyone to look at each other or look at their scene partner and imagine what they were like when they were a 5-year-old kid at their very happiest. Because what we're doing, yes, we are adults, and yes, we are telling often stories that are about adult things, about life, about things that children have yet to have had experience, the fortune of experiencing or the misfortune of experiencing. But ultimately underneath, we're a bunch of grown people in a studio in Waterloo pretending we're lawyers and bank robbers and lovers and divorcees and all that. It's all what children were doing in the playground quite happily, and we were doing in the playground. And I have worked with kids very often. I used to be in after-school care when I was at drama school, and I have worked with a lot of children, teaching them as actors, working in drama classes, working at ATYP. I've worked with actors in television that are young kids, when I'm playing someone's very older brother or whatever it happens to be. Or father now. I'm old enough to play a kid's father, of course. But I've never seen a kid go, if they're playing in the playground, go, I need to workshop my wizard. I need to go off and do research on my superhero. Or I need to find out the inner workings of the princess I'm playing before we can carry on this game. They just do it. Now, that's not negating research. Research is very important. Know the place, the time, the people, the genre, the author, the people you're working with, if you can. If you're working with a director and you can find out what their work has been in the past, if you're not familiar with it, or if you are, refresh your memory so that you're on the same page as them and you're helping them serve what they're trying to do, and ultimately the author serving what the writers are endeavouring. But at the end of the day, it comes down to a sense of play. A sense of playfulness. And no one can force you to have fun when you're doing this. It's down to you. It's a flick of a switch. But you'll have more fun if you do.
Yeah, just like that time when Lilia actually brought her daughter to the class one time.
Yes.
And then you asked us, like, who is the best actor in this room? And I was stupid enough. I wouldn't say stupid, but I was just what's that word? Just naive enough just to say, oh, look, it was pointing at you just because you're the coach. Not that I'm stupid to do that, but I was pointing to you because like you're the most experienced, you got the most accreditation. But you're like, no, it's actually Lilia's daughter. Like what you said. It's just like that childlike faith.
Yeah, you're right, and she would be. She's a walking lesson in spontaneity and observing, and there's another phrase we use in the room, which is, in order to be fascinating, you need to be fascinated. And children, they're perpetually fascinated. I forget what the number is, but how many questions they ask a day. I'm sure my friends who are parents would be able to answer that question in a heartbeat. But kids are perpetually intrigued by things, and it's funny, isn't it? They'll believe in things imaginatively that we sometimes question, but a kid will go straight to it. The bottom of a garden's a magic forest, I think I knew that I wasn't a kid anymore when I suddenly realised that the backdrop in Wizard of Oz was a backdrop. It wasn't really Munchkinland, or that Falgor in Neverending Story, I'm showing my age here, but Falgor in Neverending Story was not really a dragon, a luck dragon. He was a puppet with some wind blowing in his hair from a fan that you can't see off camera. But yes, they're extraordinary. And kids' attention spans are very questionable. Some questionable, but they're very subject to change. Of course, you ask any great author or children's author to keep a child's attention can be quite a difficult thing. Roald Dahl was a genius. But at the same time, if they find something interesting, you will not stop them from finding that interesting. They could be on. I remember being last summer. I was on a beach with family friends and one of their kids, and the little kid, couldn't have been older than 5, was playing with a little toy boat. The water was very still, so it was, it wasn't rough waves. It was nice still water, and this kid was playing with the toy boat, and you could see that when that kid was doing that, there was nothing else in the world that existed. At that moment in time, it was just me, the boat, and the water. And to have that level of focus, adults don't find it that easy, especially on a film set. You've got some guy, lady, anywhere in between who's, can I get a final check on you, get levels on you, and then final checks on makeup, and then, quiet on set. So you've got a lot of things that could distract you. So your job is to stay focused on what's happening in the story in front of you.
That's right.
And then the imagination is the most important thing. That's the muscle that always needs to be, out of all of them, limber. You don't actually...
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry, go on.
No, it was just like the childlike faith that I just said, because I remember that as a little kid, we were just playing as Ninja Turtles. We were actually fanatics of it, my brothers and I, and we didn't have to act, we just reacted, and 100%. Just like that.
Yeah. I was listening to 100%. I was listening to an interview a while back, and it comes up in class, this particular interview, because I'm never trying to, when I teach, I'm never trying to take away from the importance of hard work and doing your homework, knowing what's going on in a scene, knowing what the relationship is, investing in it, getting it in your bones, all of the things that create a wonderful performance. But underneath there is a sense of freedom and play that can be overshadowed by worrying about, have I done this, have I done that, rather than finding out on the floor and getting up and playing and using your instincts. You didn't suddenly arrive today. You've got life experience. You've been learning and informing yourself about the world and learning how to use one's body and voice to live within it all your life. So it's not like you started yesterday. You're not a novice. You are a human being. When a cat would go on a stage, if a cat was ever to go on a stage, our eyes would go straight to it, first of all because it's a fucking cat on a stage and we're going, my God, but also because they're fascinating, because they're just being themselves. You'd never see a cat walk on a stage and go, oh, I'm on, is this good cat acting? Am I being a good cat? They're just doing what they do. We as human beings, sometimes when we get on a stage or in front of a camera, yes, we're playing a character, so we have to adjust our behaviour to suit that. But ultimately, if you're not bringing in yourself and trusting that you have things to offer, that you are enough, which is something I always tell people to write in block capitals at the top of their screen, then you're high and dry. But just go in knowing that I've got some life experience. So going back to this thing about hard work, I believe wholeheartedly in this. Know your lines. As Noel Coward said, know your lines and don't bump into the furniture. But know your lines backwards so you can play. Know the given circumstances, what's going on. I don't tend to use the word objective. I tend to borrow from Larry Moss, what are you fighting for? Or what do you want? Or as Alan Alda said, there should be a sign over the wings of every theatre in the world says, do not come past this point unless you want something. Your character is always after something, as we know. But then from there, it is not an intellectual exercise. It is a physical one, and a spiritual one, an emotional one, and a social one. And so to be in one's head too much can be to our detriment, to over-intellectualise a performance. You know me, I could talk about this till I'm blue in the face, but anyway. So going back to kids and where we can learn from them. There's a documentary about Spielberg, I think it's called Spielberg, funny enough. That was a long reach to come up with that title, but it's about Spielberg, understandably. And they talk about, there's a moment in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Have you seen that film? Miguel?
Yep, I'm here.
Have you seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Oh, I have. Yes, I have. Yep. You broke up for a second there. Yes, I have. Long time ago. Yep.
Uh, Close Encounters of the Broadband Kind, but yeah, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. There's a moment in that. Have we still got lag, or are we okay? All good?
Yeah, well, that's the one where Richard Dreyfuss is actually like building some kind of
That's right.
like some spaceship on out of mashed potato, right?
That's right. He keeps having this vision, and he starts building. Yeah, and it's at the mountain that he ends up going to, and that's where we are visited. Spielberg was very interested in making aliens friendly, so E.T. and Close Encounters are about friendly aliens, not scary ones. And there's a wonderful moment in the film where Spielberg was one of the masters, borrowed a lot from Hitchcock, still is one of the masters, of course, one of the greatest film directors ever lived, but masters of suspense and of leaving things to the audience's imagination. So, for example, in Jaws, they could not get the shark to work. It was called Bruce the Shark. It was named after Spielberg's lawyer. And they couldn't get that robotic shark to work that often. It was temperamental, so they often had to shoot round it. So what ended up happening is Spielberg would imply the shark. You'd see a fin. You wouldn't see the whole thing until that extraordinary moment at the end. How they got away with that moment when the shark eats Quint, I do not know. I think we're just so invested in it, we don't think how ridiculous the setup of that, munch. But it's wonderful, brilliant filmmaking, daring stuff. But Spielberg was always interested in the reactions of actors to things. So, when Jeff Goldblum first sees the dinosaurs, sunglasses down, there it is, a little laugh. Spielberg was side coaching him off camera with that. That wonderful moment when the aliens in Close Encounters are coming through the windows and the fireplace, and all you see is these incredible lights. You don't see the aliens, of course, until the end of the film. It's a spoiler, but it's been out 40 years. But you don't see the alien until then. So you see people's reactions to it. And namely, this little kid, tiny little boy, couldn't be older than 2.5, maybe at most, 3. Now, you can't direct a kid that old. You can't say, all right, so what we're going to do it again with more feeling. So he needed to get a reaction from this kid, which was seeing the aliens. So there's a moment when he smiles, and he sort of... And then there's a moment when he's scared, and the kid's face gets an alarm on it, a look of alarm. So Spielberg, thinking ahead, how am I going to get that reaction? He got 2 members of the crew, one to dress up as a gorilla, and one to dress up as a clown, and he put them both behind sofas on the set, so that when the clown comes up, the kid laughs, and when the gorilla comes up, the kid gets a scared look, and he just films the kid's expression, and you get that wonderful moment, film history. And it goes to show you that it's all about people's reacting, be it a kid or be it an 80-year-old, acting is reacting. There's lots of quotes about this. There's lots of famous people who have said famous things about this, but, wonderful actors that have given suggestions. And I think Alan Rickman, the late, great Alan Rickman, said that acting on camera is 90% listening. And it's no secret that acting is reacting. We're very much more interested in what you do based on why you're doing it. What happened to you to make you do what you do? What was the last thing that was just said to you? And then the actor looking for the reaction in the other person they're talking to, which is why my advice is always that acting is questions, not statements. So it's not, I'm Ron Burgundy, God damn it, who put a question mark on the auto cue. But it's when you are saying something to someone that it is about eliciting a response from them and finding out what that response is when you've said it. So there are a lot of famous lines or very obvious lines that would appear in a script that are statements, full stop, literally statements. I love you comes up in everything. Well, not everything, but a lot of things. And a character says to another character, I love you. Now, that is a statement. I love you, full stop, grammatically, structurally, definitive statement. But when somebody says that to somebody else on camera or in a scene, it's a question. I love you. Do you love me back? Did you remember that I love you? Is it weird that I told you? Have I told you lately that I love you? So watching an actor that's curious about things when they're saying stuff, not to put too fine a point on it, is always part of the intrigue. So a performance can never really be you can't be too dwelling on yourself. You are dealing with what's around you. So, if you're looking at how 2 actors relate to each other, you can be acting in spite of another actor, which is the worst thing you can be doing. acting on your own in a bubble, not listening to what's being said, waiting for your cue, not really having your ears open. You can act with the other actor, which is a great thing, and most of the time I see really good actors are acting with each other at least. And ultimately, the best place to be is acting because of the other actor. Acting because of what they have said to you, what they are doing, And when you start to do that, you start to worry less about what you're doing. I'm happiest when I've completely forgotten about myself. When I watch a movie or a series, I'm not going, how well am I watching this series?